Where's my Brew Brew? Alright, these guys have a cough. They spent a week in the kennel, a local kennel, and came home with a cough. Come here, Brew Brew. This, of course, is Butchie here, and this is Brutus. We call him Brew Brew. And they've been back to the vet. We took them back to the vet yesterday. It's been 4 days since they came home from the kennel. 5 days, 4 days. Let's see, today's Thursday. They came home Sunday. So we noticed Sunday night, Brutus had a little bit of a cough. Butchie wasn't doing anything. We called the vet Monday morning, got an appointment, got him in yesterday, and the vet said that a lot of the dogs in the kennel have come down with it. They tested for everything. They don't know exactly what it is. But we got antibiotics and cough medicine for them, so they're on doxycycline. Let me get this pencil out of my hair. They're on doxycycline and cough medicine, basically dexamorphan and the cough suppressant and expectorant. I guess it's like Robitussin, pill form. So don't really know what it is, so we're watching them really carefully. Brutus is a little bit worse than he was yesterday, but we just started the medicine yesterday. If it's viral, then the doxycycline's not going to do anything. If it's viral, they'll just have to get over it. The vet wasn't sure what's going on. Anyway, so they don't seem to be feeling poorly. In other words, they're still running around. They seem to be feeling fine, but Brutus here is a little bit I say needy. He wants maybe more pets than usual. Maybe. What do you think, huh? You want some more pets than usual? Give me that paw. All right. Okay, so I'm gonna try to live up a little bit to the channel name, Wood and Metal Shop Time. Got a little woodworking project today. This is to build a dice box. So I got a request to build a dice box for a set of 7, I think it's 7, polyhedral dice for gaming. I guess it's for Dungeons and Dragons. Maybe there's some other games that they're used for. But so there's 7 dice, and so I'm going to make a little box. This is going to be an easy thing to hold. I'll make it, just to be simple, I'll make it with 8 little spaces in it. Going to use some cherry. I've got a piece of cherry here. I've got a lot of lumber. I mean, if you look up here on the wall, I've got hundreds of board feet. This is all cherry. This is all the top and second and top shelf are almost all walnut. And then on the floor, I've got underneath this pile of stuff, I've got a huge pile of cherry and walnut, and most of this is 8, 12, 16 quarter stuff. These are beams, really. Some of the stuff is 4 inches thick, so that's why it's on the floor. Anyway, huge pile. I've got a lot of lumber. I just picked this cherry board out of the scrap pile. It's mostly clear. It's already down to about 1/2 inch. I'm going to bring it down to 1/4 inch, and I think this will be enough material to make the whole box. It's got some pin knots down here on the end and a little check, a little bit of the pith here, so we'll avoid that. But from this point down, it's clear. So we'll run it through the planer, bring it down to 1/4 inch, and get the table saw sled out and start cutting some parts. I'm going to run this piece of cherry through the planer. I have a dust collection system that brings the chips out of the planer through this hose into a cyclone separator. So this barrel, it catches 90% of the chips. The remaining air goes up through this duct work over to the dust collector at the other end of the shop. All right, I've got a remote control. This is the dust collector here. It's got a 2 horsepower motor, 220 volt, 2 horsepower motor. Draws the air down into the pleated filter and collection bag below. All right. Once I turn the machines on, you're not going to be able to hear me. Got a remote control for the dust collector. I'll turn that on. We'll turn the planer on. Run it down. Run this board multiple times through the planer. Get it down to 1/4 inch. The reason I picked cherry, I have a ton of cherry and walnut here. The reason I picked cherry for this box is because the joints are very small, and cherry is a very close grain wood. Walnut, while I love to work with walnut and it's beautiful, it has an open grain, so it won't take the very small dados and tenons as well as the cherry will. So I just finished surfacing the cherry on the planer. You saw me do that. Kept checking the thickness with my little inch calipers. I've had these for a long time. They're just real convenient for measuring thickness because they read in fractional inches. And I got it down to 1/4 inch exactly. I was sneaking up on the thickness. You saw me take quite a few passes, but they were, whisper thin. Well, is my brew coming in here for a visit? Yeah, every 10 minutes I'm in here, Daddy. Okay. So I've got this piece of wood thickness to 1/4 inch. There's going to be some very fine joints on this, and I made a drawing, actual size here, and it's just going to be a rectangular box. It's 2 3/4 overall dimensions, 2 3/4 by 5 1/4. It has 8 1-inch square, actually going to be cube, 1 inch by 1 inch by 1 inch spaces inside for the die, and I'm going to have a sliding top, so the top will slide in a groove, and I'll probably use a different wood for the top. I have a piece of quarter sawn sycamore, which has a very interesting grain pattern to it, figure, and so I'm going to start out by cutting, and the order of operations is important. Some of these grooves shown here, this is all dado joints, and they're small. They're 1/8 inch by 1/8 inch. This is 1/4 inch thick, and this is actually a full-size drawing. And I'll use either the table saw blade or an 1/8 inch router bit in the router table to cut most of the tenons and dados and tenons. So the dados are the grooves, and the tenons are the little appendages on the ends of the pieces that fit in the grooves. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to just cut out the pieces in the overall dimensions, and I'm going to cut out the four pieces for the sides and the bottom. So the sides are 1.5 inches tall and 5 1/4, and on this side the pieces are, the overall width is 2 3/4. So this is 1/4 inch smaller, so the sides will be 1 1/2 by 2 1/2, and the ends are going to be 1 1/2 by 5 1/4. So I need 2 of these, 2 of these, and then the bottom will be the same width as the ends, so it will be 2 1/2 by, and it will be 1/4 inch shorter than that, so by 5. So the bottom will fit in grooves cut in the sides. The top will slide in to a groove from the end, and the rest of these will be captured by stop dados within the box. So first thing we'll do is we'll cut out the 5 main pieces, the 2 ends, the 2 sides, and the bottom. And so the first thing I'm going to do is joint one edge of this board. It's been saw cut, but I'm going to run it through the joiner to get. All right, so it gives me a perfectly straight, smooth edge. I ripped the other two widths that I needed, 2.5 and then 1 inch for all of the dividers. I'll go ahead and cut the bottom to length, which is 5 inches. Always take a cut to square the end before you slide it over against the stop. I'm measuring from this side of the saw blade to a stop so I can get consistent. Anytime you cut more than one piece that's supposed to be the same dimension, it's always best to set up a stop so that they truly are identical. Especially a small item like this where the dimensions are pretty critical. If you're off by a 1/16 of an inch, that's way too much. You've got to be within a 1/64 of an inch on almost all of your dimensions because of the small size of all of the joints, and the components themselves are small. So accuracy here is, I mean, I won't say it approaches machining accuracy, but it definitely is some of the most tight tolerance work you can get into. It's meticulous, it's exacting. All right, so I'm going to trim the end of this off, stop the blade, we'll measure over the required 5 inches, cut this to 5 inches, and go to the next step. When this sled was new, I could use this edge as a point of reference relative to the blade, because I'd cut this groove with the blade after I built the sled. But over time, it's worn a little bit, so it's not quite exact. It may be that it's a little different. It's pretty darn close. It's still pretty close. So you could, for most work, you could use this edge as a point of reference. Okay, so this will be the bottom of the box. All right, next step is to cut the all of the dados for the main part of the box, the main joints. I've put a 1/8 inch router bit in here. I want to set it to 1/8 of an inch depth of cut. So I'm going to just do some test cuts on some scrap just to adjust the depth of cut. And first thing I'm going to do, the router table has a scale here for height, so I can lower this till it just clears the bit. Alright, and then bring it up. It's a 1/16 of an inch for every rotation. So if I do 2 rotations of the crank, 1, 2, I should be at 1/8 of an inch. So we'll just do a little test cut, check that out. Alright, so that looks pretty good. Let's just check it here. It is 1/8 of an inch by 1/8 of an inch. Alright, so that's set. And it's one of the nice things about this router lift. One thing about it is it's in the extension of my table saw table, and it allows me to use the same fence, which is, you know, very helpful. So I don't have to have a separate piece of furniture in the shop, piece of equipment in the shop. I can combine the two to save some floor space. Okay, so I've got the 1/8 inch router bit in here. I'm going to start cutting some 1/8 inch dados on the parts so they'll fit together. I'll roll the camera, won't be commenting much as I do this. And let's see if we can build the outside of the box. So I've got the two sides, the two ends, and the center divider with all of the dados cut. Now, this will actually, I will cut this down 1/4 of an inch, so this will clear the slide-in top. So the slide-in top goes in this groove, the top groove, and there's short dividers which will go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It'll go between here and there. So that's all the dados that I need to cut, and I just used the 1/8 inch router bit, adjusted the fence, used a spacer. This is an 1/8 inch parallel. I use that occasionally to space off from the fence, and just cut the grooves carefully. These dados are only a 1/16 of an inch deep, because 1/8 of an inch deep like the other ones would go clear through, and obviously that wouldn't work. So now I just need to cut tongues on the two ends of this piece, the two ends of this piece, two ends of this piece, and then all the way around the bottom. So that'll be the bottom panel. And then I need to make the inch and a little over inch and 3/16 dividers. So once we cut the dados on these, the tenons, once we cut the tenons on all these pieces, we can assemble them temporarily and then come back and let's cut the 6 dividers to fit in there. And we're, closing in on this little dice box project. I've got a little bit of trimming to do. I need to trim these tenons off so that the top edges will fit flush. As it slides up here, it needs to slide up another 1/8 of an inch. So I need to take an 1/8 of an inch off of these two tenons. So let me do that. All right, in order to make these small dividers, they're too small to hold, and cut when I want to cut the tenons on the ends. One tenon's a 1/16 of an inch, one's an 1/8 of an inch. So my technique for doing that is to set the stop to the appropriate length, overall length, and first cut 2 dados, a dado on each side of this stick here, this board here. Okay. So that gives me, if I cut this off right on this edge, that gives me the tenon I need, the 1/8 inch long tenon. And then now I can cut the small tenon on this side. So I wind up with a short tenon here and a longer tenon here. I can just go over to the chop saw, cut this off. So there I've cut off then the part I need with the short tenon and the long tenon, and without getting my fingers too close to the saw blade. Alright, so that's the box assembled. Got this nice piece of quarter sawn sycamore. Don't know how easy it is for you to see the figure in this board. I've already planed it down to a little over 1/4 of an inch, and this is the medullary rays of the lumber when the wood is quarter sawn. And that is, the growth rings are basically vertical in the edge of the board. This figure, when the finish is applied, shimmers, and that characteristic is called chatoyance. C-H-A-T-O-Y-A-T-O-Y-A-N-C-E, and it's a characteristic of the figure in some lumber and in gems such as cat's eye, tiger eye, where you get what appears to be different layers of reflection depending on the angle of the light as it shines on the material. So this is a nice piece of quarter sawn sycamore. Sycamore is related to the maple, and it's a very stable wood. A lot of vintage furniture has drawers made out of sycamore as a secondary wood because it's a easy wood to work, pretty stable, and of course you get this nice figure. I'm going to cut a piece of this quarter sawn sycamore for the lid of the box, and we'll rabbet the edges to fit in the grooves in the top so that it slides in, over the top of at the top of the box. Then we'll put a little finger hole, not a hole, recess in it so that you can pull it open. My measured dimensions are 2 1/4. So in this groove, and allowing for this groove here, actually 2 1/2 by 5 3/16. 2 1/2 by 5 3/16. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is cut a piece of 5 3/16 on the chop saw. I really have a choice of which side to use, whether to use, this side or this side. The problem with this side, there's a little bit of chip out. The grain is so gnarly that when you run it through the planer, you do get some chip out. I'm torn. This would be smoother. This has more chatoyance than this side. Well, no, it's about the same. Well, I like this side better. There's a little more dramatic grain. This is more consistent. I don't know. What do you think? I don't know if I can get you a shot of the shimmering. It's most pronounced when it's got a layer of coat of finish on it, and when we get finish on it, we'll see it. Get another look at it. I've installed a larger straight cutting rabbiting bit in the router table here, and I've attached a auxiliary fence. This is just a piece of painted maple. It's actually a piece from a cabinetry job. My wet bar in the basement, leftover piece of trim. So it's just painted maple. Okay, so I can use this to cut the rabbets around the edge of this piece of stock, and I think I've decided to use this side, which is a more much more dramatic grain pattern, I think. Yeah, now I'm second guessing everything. I'll tell you what, I'm going to use this side. Okay, so for this side to be up, I need to rabbet this so that it's cut down on the top edge. So we need to make a rabbet just 1/8 of an inch by 1/8 of an inch roughly. I use this other piece, the cutoff, as a test piece. So I'm going to make multiple passes, raising the bit each time. There's my brew. And you can hear Butchie outside barking because the FedEx truck drove up. Butchie goes absolutely berserk whenever there's a delivery truck, whether it's FedEx or UPS. He just loses all control. I don't know get. Brutus, on the other hand, is like, I couldn't care less. So he's in here sitting, relaxing. Here comes Butchie, breathing hard from chasing the delivery truck. He can't, he's in the yard. The truck is on the outside on the driveway. He can't get, outside of the fence. But he's just manic over delivery trucks. You like that FedEx truck? Did you get a piece of it? No, Daddy, but I got to bark at it a lot. Okay, so I'm going to take a few passes and then do some test fitting on the box. I'm going to just try on this test piece first. went and compared it to the glue up, and it fits okay. The outside dimensions fit okay, so I think it's just a matter of raising the bit 1/16 of an inch at a time. All right, still got some more to come up. All right, so I just finished putting the first couple coats of shellac. I'm using Zinsser Bullseye shellac, and I've got a couple coats on here, and I took a Forstner bit in the drill press and just created a little indent here for your thumb to fit in to slide the lid open, so as a thumb catch. So this is ready, is drying, and I cut out some 1-inch squares of black leather suede, which I'll put, after this dries, I'll put these in the bottom. And I've cut out another piece of black leather, which I will glue to the bottom. It's suede on one side, it's smooth on the other side. And I'll glue this to the bottom of the box. My plan is to use this 3M Super 77 adhesive, spray adhesive. So I'll spray the leather with that, adhere it to the bottom, and then cut it with a razor all the way around. So I'm getting close here to being finished. The lid does slide in, and is kind of a nice little bit of friction fit, so it won't fall out, won't slide open on its own. And so we'll come back tomorrow. We'll give these all a light sanding and apply another coat of finish. The nice thing about the shellac is it dries in a couple hours, as opposed to, you know, overnight, like varnish. So, all right, closing in on this dice box for the polyhedral dice. All right, I'll bring you back. We'll come back tomorrow and finish this up. So here's the finished dice box. I put some black leather squares in the bottom, covered the bottom of it with black suede, and the lid slides on easily. A little finger hole here for taking it off. Alright, so she's done. So that was an interesting little project. It took about 4 hours in the shop to complete it, and another half an hour this morning to just put the final, to glue the leather on. And it still needs, I think I'm going to give it one more coat of spray varnish. I use this Minwax polyurethane spray. I have no affiliation with Minwax or anything, but the spray varnish is very convenient, and it does a nice job. So I use a lot of Minwax products in my woodworking, especially the wiping varnish, which I really like. Okay, that's it for this project. I hope you found it interesting. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.